Am I live? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have the absolutely incredible Allie Mills coming up to the stage. She has been seen in maybe a few shows you might have heard of, The Wonder Years, General Hospital, and all sorts of other really amazing stuff. Please give it up for Miss Allie Mills.
Yes! Woo!
When you get to be 75 years old, that's all that matters.
That's right.
That's who's coming up behind us, and that's what the Wonder Years was about. So, hi guys.
Hey everybody, you guys having a great time so far here at the Chocolate Expo?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I couldn't hear you. That's what we want to hear. So again, we have Allie Mills with us. Awesome. And we're going to get to know Allie a little bit better today, and then we're going to take some questions from you to get to know her even better. And I want to know first, in the back of the room, can you hear me okay? All right, if at any point you can't hear me, just go like this and say, Jim, we can't hear you. All right, thank you. So Allie, can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and when you first got interested in performing?
Okay. There you are. I was just talking to my very young friend, and I began acting when I was really little. My dad was a director in the 1950s of a show called The Patty Page Show, and Patty Page didn't like the little girl that they hired to sing a song with her called How Much Is That Doggy in the Window? And so she pointed at me in that crowd of children at this Christmas special to come up and sing with her. And so for the first time, you just made me a little softer. Can you make me a little louder? Yeah, a little louder.
Louder, please.
So for the first time, when I was about younger than you actually, because I was, I think, 8 years old, I got to sing How Much Is That Doggy in the Window with Patty Page. And the only reason that I got the job is I found her so scary that I was staring at her like this, because she wasn't very nice. And I think that's why the little girl didn't like singing with her. But anyway, I put $96 in the bank when I was, a young kid, and that was my first job, acting. And I fell in love with it after that.
So, thank you. So what did your parents think of this? Were they supportive of the idea of you becoming an actress?
Well, I mean, parents want you to go to college. They want you to go to high school. They want you to learn. My mother did anyway. She wanted me to really learn about the world. And my mother was one of the first, in the 1950s, she was an executive. She was an art editor of this magazine, which was very rare in those days. And she wanted me, she went to Vassar College, and she wanted me to be smart, and she wanted me to, have my feet on the ground and make my way. So she went, if you can do it as an actor, okay, but, go to college first. And I did. I went to Yale University, first class of women, and I graduated magna cum laude, and not in acting. I mean, I took acting there at the drama school, but I was, an undergraduate, and so I had to they didn't have a drama major, and I majored in the history of art, and the head of the history of art department gave me an A, so I graduated magna cum laude. But the whole time I was doing acting at Yale, and then I went to drama school in London after that. But I think it's important for actors, especially ones that love theater, to learn about everything, and to really learn about the world, and not to just get too focused, especially these days. Theater is dwindling, and there's all streaming TV. It's very, very different world. And I just think it's important to be a really rounded out woman, So I'm saying that to you. She wants to be an actress, and the minute I saw her, I knew she would be. So she had a Hamilton t-shirt on, which is a great show.
So thank you, Allie. So other than you, do we have any actors or acting hopefuls out here? Raise your hand if you're an actor
I knew
or
it.
want to be an actor. Okay. So
I knew when I saw you guys, I could tell.
all right. So this might be something you want to hear, or anybody out there who's looking to become an actor. Allie, do you remember at any time going out for a role, a specific role that maybe you didn't get? And do you have any advice for people about when you don't get a role, how to maybe not get discouraged?
Well, I mean, there's going to be hundreds of roles that you don't get. That's just like, it's something that you don't know, but it's just kind of a given with an actor. Now, the way that an actor auditions is, I hate it. You self-tape on Zoom at home in your apartment, which is horrible. Even when you're reading for a Broadway play, they now want you to do it on self-tape. And I'm really against it. I hate it. The way that I always got jobs was to walk into a room and meet human beings. And, you know, it was chemistry with the directors. It was chemistry with the man that wrote the play. It was chemistry with the other actors. That's what theater to me was all about. And now you're sitting at home and you can do take after take after take and cry and whatever you want. But that's not what it's going to be like when you arrive on that set of a TV series and they say action, because you don't get 7 tries. And you're with other people, which is what it should be about. So I'm not in love with what's happening right now in the world of acting. But again, you just have to keep going. And there will be times when they can't see, especially on self-tape, they can't see the power of your life force. You know, they can't see your spirit. It doesn't always translate the way that it does in a room, but you do what you can. And the other thing is, an actor, you know, it's like, I can't remember where he is, but there's a guy who's a painter that I met today. There you are. So he's an artist, and he paints sets for theater. But they're judging his painting. When you go into a room, they're going to judge everything about you. They're going to judge the way you look, the way, you know, if you're pretty, if you're not pretty, if you're this, if you're that. And it's really hard not to take it personally. But it's really important not to take it personally. You know, you have to just become that character, and if it's what they want, it's what they want. And if it isn't, you know, not to get crushed by it, because it just seems like a rejection of you as a person. And you don't, you know, so you can't take it personal. You have to just keep playing your characters. And I've been doing it a long time, 70 years. Yeah.
Great advice, thank you. You guys heard that, right? All right, good. Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah.
So now, have any of you here in the audience ever heard of this little TV show called The Wonder Years?
Yeah!
All right, we have some fans out there. So, Allie, you became known to most of us with this role of Norma Arnold on The Wonder Years. Can you tell us a little bit about your first take as, you know, your first thoughts of this character, Norma, as you entered this now iconic TV series?
Yeah, well, when I first read the script of The Wonder Years, first of all, I thought it was so weird to have a narrator. I didn't really understand what I was reading. It was written like a high school term paper. It was very strange. And then there was this narrator. But the mother was a housewife in the 50s. You know, it took place in the 60s, but she was like a 50s housewife. And I said to the casting director, who knew me really well, see, in those days, you'd go in and it was a person. Mary Buck was her name. She knew me. I think she'd cast me as other things before. And she said, Allie, they are not looking for a typical, vapid, shallow housewife. The woman that wrote this show, who's Carol Black, her mom went to college. She's really smart. She's a complicated woman, but she married her high school sweetheart who was a football player. And so she wanted a complicated character underneath a shirt-waist dress and pearls and handing her husband a martini every time he walked into the house. to keep peace in the house. And she said, I know you can do this. Mary Butler had confidence. And so I asked my mother to send me a shirtwaist dress and her pearls, and she did. And I wore Ken's sneakers. And I went in as a 50s housewife, but as a more complicated person in my mind who just wanted my family to be happy. And that's, and that was sort of that. And as I was saying yesterday to somebody, I read at first with the girl that played my teenage daughter, Karen. And Karen, Olivia Dabo has really big breasts. And she was only 16 years old, and she was wearing a little silk thing with no back that was just sort of floating around and with no bra. And I just started blushing. And I was like, whoa. And they went, you guys are cast. It was instant. They saw who I was as a mother. They saw who she was. It was just, so that's how I actually got cast, was that very first. They were like, I think we're done. This is exactly what we wanted. So that was the first day.
Perfect chemistry. Yeah, and you still have it.
Olivia was supposed to be here and is really sorry she got a job, but she wanted to come with me because we're still really, really good friends.
Yeah, the chemistry is definitely still there. So
she's crazy, but really fun.
Yeah. So now, the Wonder Years, when you look at sitcoms, especially today, you have, I feel like they're not really characters, but very often you have caricatures, especially the parents. They make the parents very foolish and silly and not people that we can identify with. But on the Wonder Years, I think each of the characters struck a nerve with people watching it, and you might all agree with me that we could, and I see the nodding of the heads, that we could identify with a character on this show. I know I did. Was there, at any point in your time filming the show, and even maybe watching it back, was there any character that you could identify with, either in yourself at the time or even when you were younger?
Well, the character on the Wonder Years that I personally most identify with would be my daughter Karen, because I was a hippie in the 60s, and I was pretty out of control. So, for sure, her, which is why I never thought that I would be cast as Norma Arnold, because I wasn't married when I played Norma. I'd never had children. I, didn't know what being a housewife really meant, except I had to figure it out in my brain, what being the head of a family meant, which is what really mattered to her, was that everyone in her family was happy. That was like her, what mattered to her. But Karen, for sure, was who I heard. That was my girl.
And it's like the complete opposite of the character of Norma. Yeah, it's very interesting to know that about you. Thank you. Now, a lot of TV shows, sitcoms, dramas, they have a big finale. They wrap things up with a nice little ribbon. But the Wonder Years, things didn't wrap up perfectly the way maybe we would have liked to see that happen. Is there anything you would have liked to see different when the show ended?
How many people liked the end of the Wonder Years? Nobody. Not one person, including me. I'm really upset about it. I can't get into the real details, but we were engaged in a lawsuit, and that's why the show ended. And it was a disaster. It was a tragedy to me because they had a storyline where Dan was going to die, the father was going to die, and Norma was going to work and take over the family. And Dan did come back, I think, in an episode as like in Fred's mind as this kind of ghost character. And it was very important to them to play out the whole trajectory of the story, and we never got to. And it's really, I think the way that they tied it up was okay because they had to, but it was devastating. We were very, very upset. The cast was all, we almost went on strike, but we didn't do that those days. So we were grateful to have done it, but anyway, no, I hated the ending. I'm glad you did too.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, thank you for that. So, you've been a part of probably close to a dozen TV series over the years, 10, 11.
yeah, series that I was in, but then I've been that I've been recurring in like another probably 15 or so.
You know, I'm thinking starting with the Associates in 1979 with
Yeah, I
Martin
don't
Short.
think anybody would know that show. Well, my very first job was with do you guys know who Martin Short is?
Yes.
So Martin Short was a Canadian comic, young. We wrote really young. We were in our 20s. And the man that wrote Mary Tyler Moore and Rhoda, James L. Brooks, he's a great writer, wrote this series about, it was the first time they did a white-collar comedy. It was a sitcom, but it was about a law firm in New York. And Martin and I were the two stars of it, playing young 20-year-old lawyers. And it was called The Associates. And that was my very first job. It was that one I didn't want to get rejected. I really wanted that job. I actually went in and read for the wrong character. There was a girl from Radcliffe who was really gorgeous. And I just thought, well, instead of gorgeous, I'm just going to make her rich and snotty. You know, and that's how she's going to get the guys. And so I went in a blue blazer and pearls. And I did my hair, and I was just like, I thought I could just get any guy. And Jim Brooks started laughing. And he said, you think you're going to get the guy? You think you're that girl? I said, no. And he said, but I want you to play the other character. And I said, but, you know, Leslie was written as this street kid who was Jewish because the show was very, very sort of Borscht Belt comedy. And I said, but, you know, how am I going to play Leslie? And he said, well, make her Irish Catholic. What difference does it make? You just got to be poor. And I went, okay. So that's how that job happened with Marty Short, and that was really exciting. I was very young; I was in my 20s, and that was my first job in a big TV series. I've been in little things, but that was my first lead role in a big series.
Yeah, but even in the big series, I mean, you had not just the Wonder Years, but you went west to Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, but then even after that. You've done these period pieces, like, you know, the 1960s and 70s with the Wonder Years, the Western in the 1800s. Then you finally made it to the present time, and you took the leap into daytime drama, which is a whole other genre.
Yeah.
And you took the role of Pamela Douglas on The Bold and the Beautiful. Now this, if you know, for the actors out there, hi actors, if you end up taking a soap opera role, this is 5 days a week, a very rigorous type of
We're losing our children. You got to make the questions short.
All right, listen. Working on a soap opera is difficult. Can you tell us what that was like for you, getting on a soap opera after the other jobs?
Well, just so you guys know, the reason I think most actors in LA do soap operas is because they want to be home with their family. And when I was asked to do The Bold and the Beautiful, I was very, very newly and happily married to a wonderful actor named Orson Bean.
Yes!
Who was just like an incredible person and actor. And I was so happy to be married that the minute that they offered me that, I used to do 10 days with Betty White and the lead on The Bold and Beautiful, Susan Flannery. But we had such amazing chemistry as a family, me, Betty White, and Susan, that they said, would I stay? And so I went home and I asked my husband, I said, they want me to sign a contract, but it's like for 7 years. And he said, do it, because you'll be home every night at 5 o'clock, and we can have dinner together, and you won't travel. And and so it worked, and I did it for 18 years, that soap opera. And she was bipolar, so she was weird, just so I could be, even though she was nice and she was from a rich family and everything, she was also crazy and did weird things to people, so it was fun. And then after that, I did it.
Before, I just wanted to ask you, because you worked with Susan Flannery, who eventually did the unthinkable and left The Bold and the Beautiful. Did you worry that maybe you were going to get written out at that point?
No, she didn't, by God, she did not get written out. Susan Flannery starred in the show, and she was a brilliant actor. And she was now like my age, I'm 75 years old. And they were trying to cut her part down so that, because you pay the children nothing. And Susan was getting paid a lot because she deserved it. And she went, oh, no, that's not gonna happen. You're not gonna cut, I don't wanna be 1 day a week on the show. And so she just said no. And I'm not going to accept, becoming, they wrote that show for her. And that's who all the fans loved. She was brilliant and such a great actor. So she and Ron Moss left the show the same day. They said, no, we're not accepting this situation just because you want to pay people less money, the kids. And so I wasn't worried. I just missed her like crazy because she was so great. But I didn't worry about Pam, coming and going or anything like that. But yeah.
And then, thank you. And then Heather Weber. Any General Hospital fans out here? So then you went into General Hospital.
The crazy people are here.
Yeah, we get the Wonder Years people, we got the General Hospital. Now this is a very different role, Heather Weber. What was that like taking on such a villainous role?
So, as I just said, I was extremely happily married for 35 years to the love of my life, and that's just in itself such a blessing. I deeply believe in God now. I did not growing up, but I met one of the most amazing people on the planet, and I know that was a gift from God. And so I had this amazing life with him, and then he, there was a tragic accident that I witnessed. He got killed in front of me, and I didn't know if I could kind of go on for a minute, but then literally like a couple of months after that, I got a phone call about Heather Weber from these two crazy guys in the Catskills drinking martinis. The head writer and his husband called me from the Catskills and said, we just thought of a great idea. We need to replace Heather Weber for the 60th anniversary. Would you like to come play a serial killer? And I'm grieving the loss of my husband. And I just felt like God said, say yes. Just go, do it. So that's how I'm living my life right now, is I'm just listening and saying yes or no. And I never had so much fun as the past, 3.5 years. I mean, and then the other thing is I'm now 75 years old and I won 2 Emmys for the first time in my life. So I'm really proud of that girl. I mean, it's so fun to play somebody crazy, you guys. If you ever get to read for a crazy person, because you have the freedom to do whatever you want. There's nothing that Heather could do that was wrong, right? I mean, killing people is wrong, but she could do anything. I could make any choice I wanted, because that's the freedom of somebody that just thinks there's no boundaries. And what I realize is that people love it because all of us want to be free, right? So that's the major thing. I said it's so funny and fun to be free. So like there wasn't any character on that show that scared me or that could top Heather Weber. She could face anybody. I mean, Jeannie Francis, it's like whatever. I loved working with her because it was so fun to be her old rival, And Sonny was kind of, woo, he was pretty strong. So I did bow to him because I knew he could kill me in a nanosecond, right? But he didn't scare me. He just, I just had to kind of go, okay, what can I do for you? Which is what I did when he came to my jail cell.
So I guess it's a fair statement to make that you didn't ever think that maybe Heather had gone too far.
Ever. She couldn't, right? No, I don't think so. I just didn't want, it would be too far to become too nice. That was my only worry, is I didn't want to become too nice when they made me, more sane. I went, So I always left it up in the air whether I really was healed or not.
So it's always fun to play the bad guy.
Yeah.
The bad gal. So I think there's a question that a lot of people, I just have a couple more. I think everyone probably wants to know, will we see you again as Heather Weber?
Well, they have asked me back, but I don't know when, and I don't know yet how. They haven't told me what I'm going to be doing, like if I'm going to be nice or, whatever. But the head writer is just such a great person, and we become friends. I used to call him, sometimes he'd call me at midnight and said, I have the funniest idea. What do you think about this? And I went, oh, that's so good, I love it. And then we would change stuff. So he's back as the head writer, and I don't know when, but I'm definitely they asked me to come back.
That's what we want to hear. What do you say? All right. Now, do you all have some questions for Allie Mills? We have Heather, not Heather Weber, but she's a little more safe than Heather Weber. But Heather's going to come around with the microphone and take some questions from you. Just raise your hand.
All right.
Hi, Allie, how are you?
I'm great.
Battery died.
I'm Steve from Philadelphia. I wanted to know, are you going to come back to Bold and Beautiful at all?
You know what? I was just at a party like 3 weeks ago with the head executive producer, Brad Bell, and he had a cocktail and said, you're definitely coming back. So I don't know again when, but yes, he asked me if I would come back, and he just, it's like these head writers have to get like a light bulb go off in their head, how they're going to bring a character back, because on a soap, the story has to keep going.
Right.
So he's told me that it's in his brain.
Well, you were great on there as well, too, so I'd like to see you
I
back.
can't hear you, I'm so sorry.
No, I'm saying you were great on Bold and Beautiful as well.
Thank you.
I'd love to see you on there.
Yeah, I love Pam. She was fun.
And I loved you in the Wonder Years as well, too. That was a classic show. So
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, I think I have one over here. My young man and then my young lady.
What challenges did you have? Like,
Can you talk a little louder?
what challenges did you have? Like when you started acting, how did you overcome them?
What challenges did you have?
I
and how
heard
did you
it.
overcome
Okay, he asked me what challenges did I have when I was a younger actor and how did I overcome them. I'm going to tell you a story. I went to read, there's an actor who's always really, really tan. His name is George Hamilton. And he's a wonderful actor, and he was doing a 3-character sitcom about a very rich guy that owned his house, and he lost all his money, and the new owner opens the door and says, oh, because he was still in his mansion, he said, are you the butler? And George Hamilton went, ooh, yes I am. So he ended up being the butler, and then they hire a cook, and that was the character that I was reading for. So it was 3 characters, and I went to read for George Hamilton, and it was this girl that went to Radcliffe College who was like a really good cook, but really acerbic and funny and kind of straightforward. And George Hamilton was sitting there in shorts in the office, and he went, we just had immediate, again, it was live, which self-tapes or not, we had immediate chemistry. I thought he was hilarious and charming, and we just liked each other. Anyway, the head writers were there, and they said, we'd like you to go this afternoon to meet the president of CBS television to read for this part again. And I went like, really? All right, great. I was in a sundress, no makeup, crazy hair, flip-flops, because that's what I thought she would be wearing. And so I just went and sat in my car and prayed for 4 hours, and then went, and I opened up the door, and the office was this gigantic rich person's office with this man sitting behind the desk, and George was suddenly in a blue blazer and a gold watch, and he was very fancy and not like he'd been in the office, and he didn't read with me, somebody else did. Anyway, I read, and I thought I was just as, the same exact reading. And then the head of CBS says, excuse me, could you please just go wait outside? So she took me outside, and they didn't close the door, and this is what I heard. So the president of CBS says to this wonderful casting director, this is what you bring me? You call that pretty? You call that sexy? I said I wanted someone famous. And like, you are a disgrace, he said. Ellen Meyer, that was her name. And I heard that. And he was talking about me. So this is the kind of stuff you have to overcome. I was sitting there going like, it was like a gut punch. I was really hurt. You know, it hurts your feelings. But they asked me, came and shut the door and then talked more. And then they asked me to come back and read again. So I went back in and I really thought about it and I just mustered my strength right up to the desk. And I said, you know what? I can't help it if you don't think I'm pretty or if you don't think I'm sexy or if I'm not famous. And I said, but I never said I was. I'm reading for a character. And Ellen Meyer is the best casting director in Hollywood, but I'll read again. And like George Hamilton went, I like saw him go like this. So, because I came back, like I wasn't gonna crumble, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then, so I read again, and then they just said, okay, thank you. And I left, and I didn't hear anything for 3 weeks. So I figured, okay, I didn't get the job. These things happen all the time, right? But I wasn't going to let it get me down. A friend of mine said, you know, you haven't heard no either, so don't give up. And I went, well, I mean, 3 weeks is a long time not to hear anything. Anyway, I didn't give up. I just kept kind of putting energy out that I wanted to play this girl. And I get a phone call 3 weeks later to come back and read again. And there was the prettiest girl I'd ever seen in the world, the sexiest woman I'd ever seen, and a famous actress that was my age, who'd already starred in a series. And anyway, we all read. I was the last one to read, and George Hamilton was back in his shorts, and the president of CBS wasn't there. And after I read, they said, Allie, just go close the door, but stay inside. And I closed the door, and they went, you got it.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing it. Woo! So that my answer to your very long answer to your question is, don't let the bastards get you down, because they will. We just can't take stuff personally. I was saying that, you know, to you earlier. It's really, really important to just stay strong and believe in yourself. You know, and sometimes we won't get a job, but don't let it make you sad. Okay.
All right.
That was a great story. Thank you, Allie.
Nice.
Are there any more questions?
Maybe one or two more.
Oh, you're gonna ask me a question. Okay, see how loud you can talk into that mic.
What was your favorite behind the scenes,
A little louder.
what was your favorite behind the scenes moment of the Wonder Years?
Oh, good question. What was my favorite behind the scenes moment of the Wonder Years? You know, my fondest memories are, we were a family, and these kids were your age. They were like really, you know, Fred was 9, Danica was 8. You know, I can't remember how, I guess probably Josh was 9 or 10. So I felt like the most important thing I could do was, bye-bye guys, good luck in your careers, okay? Don't give up. I felt like the most important thing that I could do was be a real mother figure to these actual children who were like just starting out in this very tough business. So I said to the producers, I don't care how much time constraint we're under, these kids need to have fun. So like at the dining table, which I was at almost all the time in the kitchen, when we were filming and like the camera was not on me and it was on one of the kids, I would put peas in my nose and blow them into my milk glass. Just like, oh, it with my peas, or take a big thing of mashed potatoes and go, you know, throw it, which was actually in an episode. One of the butthead ended up doing it with mashed potatoes on someone's face and said like, you die, or I can't remember what he said, but so just having fun with the kids are my favorite thing, to keep everybody, you know, have their spirits alive. They were growing up like you, but on set. And then they would go to school in a classroom and come back to work. So it was really important that they, you know, had a family. So that was my favorite thing.
Thanks. We have time for one more question. Do we have one more question out there? Perfect.
Will Pam be coming back to the Bold and the Beautiful?
When am I coming back to the Bold and the Beautiful? Well, I just found out like about a month ago that he wants me to come back. We just don't know like what I'm gonna do. I think he wants it to be something funny. Say that again. I won't forget the lemon bars, I promise. But I think he wants me to do something like funny with Jennifer Garris, you know, with Donna, you know, be mean to people.
She said she doesn't care what you do, she just wants you back on the Bold and Beautiful.
You got it. I promise. I already said yes to him that I would. I just don't know in what capacity, but you know, maybe I'll start killing people on the Bold and the Beautiful. I almost killed Donna. She deserves it. She went, yeah, I have a list.
Well, those are some great questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
How
you,
about
guys.
a big round of applause for
Thank
Allie
you so
Mills?
much. God bless you.
So, if you have not made it over to our table yet, please come over and say hello. Also, don't forget to say hi to the Happy Days guys, our friends from the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie, and of course, all these amazing vendors with chocolate, wine, cheese, and everything else. So we hope you had a great time. And again, how about one more big round of applause for Allie Mills? Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
And like Jim was saying, she's going to be over at this table all day. If we did not get to your question, come on over, have a chat, all sorts of cool stuff. Coming up at 3 o'clock on the main feed, we are going to have the cast of Willy Wonka doing a fun Q&A for you guys, answering all your questions. So come on back, grab some chocolate, grab some wine, get some samples, and then come on back at 3 o'clock, folks. Also keep in mind, our kids zone is still open all day. We have balloon twisting,